I'm in need of a great big grin. I know where to go for some oxytocin when the whole world seems to be cold and mean. I know who to call for some dopamine. I'll be your Lucy, you'll be my Ethel, I'll be the Thelma, you'll be Louise, and we'll ride together till we reach the rainbow's end. Thank you for being my friend.
Welcome, friends, to Anatomy of Friendship. I'm Kelly Sullivan Walden. Duh, you know that by now. And this is Joey Sutton.
They may not. This may be their first episode.
It may be, you may be listening out of order, which is completely fine. But, if you are, we suggest that you kind of go back to the beginning just so it all makes sense, because we make references all over the place. And speaking of all over the place and all of it, today we're talking about I, and I is for I'm all of it. Ah. And Joe, why don't you start?
All right. So I am all of it. What does that mean? This is a really common distinction for you and I.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember you being on a talk show once and they were like, what are you talking about? How am I like that person that I abhor? How am I like that person? I don't see what you're talking about. And so I think we should get a little bit, we should get a little bit of microcosmic about explaining this distinction that we think is so normal, but isn't. So the I am all of it is, I'm going to say a friend of mine, at the time his name was Astarius. Astarius once said to me, Joey, every person in the world is a cell that lives inside of you. And that blew my mind. It made me think about how, in the last episode, we talked about how I have these sub-personalities that live inside of me whose strategies were to protect me, but they were not often very savory, and how much I rejected them. And that's just a couple of handfuls of sub-personalities. But if I had the whole world and everyone in the world that lived inside of me, what does that mean? And so I often try to think of myself as a diamond and think of everyone as a diamond and the whole world as a diamond. But if I'm a diamond, then I'm made of these trillions of aspects of self that are more than trillions, that are innumerable aspects of self. And so if there are, however many billion people on the earth, I have every aspect inside of me. I often think about how many different faces we have. Like, how is it that we've had billions and billions and billions of people on the earth, and they live and they die and they live and they die, and there's billions and billions and billions, and everyone looks different. People can look similar, but there isn't one person that's the same, not even an identical twin. And so having said that, I think, how many mathematical combinations of aspects of self could there possibly be? Innumerable. And so I feel like I'm like an herb store. Inside of me is an herb store, and there's all these different herbs, and there's innumerable combinations, mathematical combinations of herbs that I can create, like numerous different kinds of tea. You can have, a half a gram of chamomile and a gram of lavender, or you can have a half a gram of lavender and a gram of chamomile, and that's only 2 teas. And you can change those. You can change those measurements ad nauseum. Mathematically, there can be so many mathematical combinations of chamomile and lavender. So if that's true, and we have these, 100 trillion cells in our body made of 100 trillion atoms per cell, like that, I can't even do that math. So all those different aspects of personality, of flavors of feelings, flavors of expression, all of those different mathematical formulations live inside of me. So that's how I imagine that all the people in the world are a cell that live inside of me. And that includes the most lovely of all to the most unsavory of all, down to, and I have a fascination with serial killers, because I'm so curious about how different their thought system is, right?
And,
like a serial killer can kill someone without conscience and eat them and save their skin to make a bag or a suit out of it, or like save their bones, or, you know, eat their brains while they're still alive. Like there are all these crazy, right. Okay. So there are parts of me that have thought like, I'm going to push that person off a cliff. I want to run that person over. I want to eat that person's butt. I want to bite that person's leg. So like if that is 1 grain of a tea formula,
yeah,
it's still inside of me, even if in thought, if only in thought. Of course, I've never, you know, I can't eaten someone's brain, but hey, we may have eaten the brain of an animal.
Right.
We eat animals. I love how in Twilight, how the vegetarian vampires only eat animals.
Only eat animals.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I am all of it. You know, and we talked about my John of God experience in the last episode, how I have all these different aspects and I have to learn to hold all these different aspects. But how is it useful in friendships? And I want to always bring it back to friendships because that's what this podcast is about. You know, I think sometimes we can, us or them, me or them kind of phrasing like, that's not me, that's them, they did that, I didn't do that, they're like that, I'm not like that, can you believe that they did that, or those people, that kind of languaging is really separative, and it doesn't include how I'm like that. And I feel like in the radical responsibility version of our acronym, we take responsibility for any aspect of anything that we see outside of us as a part of ourselves. And then we mine that gold by looking at, why am I like that? Why does that part of me exist? Why does that part of them possibly exist? And if we can understand the why, we can understand how we can be that way. Because a lot of the aspects of people we don't like, we can reduce down. We've often talked about reducing them down into adjectives. So there's certain political leaders that I'm not a fan of. And I find them to be the most atrocious or extreme versions of things that I don't like. But if I boil it down to adjectives, I can see, has that adjective ever lived in me at all? So selfish, self-serving, narcissistic, deflective, irresponsible,
lying,
discriminatory, bigoted, sexist, racist, sizist,
lording power over.
Yeah. I mean,
misuse
of power. If you look at just those adjectives, not the person or the deed, but just the adjectives, you and I always can find those inside of ourselves. We have those moments in our minds, if nowhere else, just in our minds. And so I am all of it is such an important distinction to stay connected with humans and not us or them, ourselves. And therefore we stay integrated within ourselves, and we also can reduce the amount of expectation and requirement we have for ourselves to maintain an impossible persona that is unsustainable. So if I am sometimes selfish, and I am sometimes make mistakes, and I sometimes, you know, say the wrong thing, or say it with a tone, or get snarky, or I'm selfish, or I'm inconsiderate, I'm any of those things. If I reject myself the way I reject others when I'm judging them, then I am just, my own rejection deprives me of love. And in another episode, we talked about how I heard Marianne Williamson say once that guilt attracts punishment. And the greatest form of punishment is to be deprived of the ability to receive love. So if I'm judging others for their imperfections, and therefore I'm judging myself for my imperfections, and as long as I'm not a complete and total sociopath, I will feel remorse or guilt for those things that I do to others. And that guilt or remorse will deprive me of the ability to receive love. And I am selfish enough to want to receive love. So if I cut myself off with the same judgments to myself that I hold to others, I deprive myself of love. So therefore it is in my best interest to see how I am all of it, in order to understand the motivation behind the all of it, so that I can have compassion for all of it, so that I can then be deserving and worthy of love. I pass.
I'm going to pass out because that was just so perfect. That was like, that says everything. So I'm just going to highlight a few things that you said and kind of add a little of my nuance on it. But starting at the beginning, when I first heard that it was Carl Jung's perspective to look at every dream from the perspective that everyone and everything in the dream is an aspect of the dreamer, it felt like a revelation to me. And then to recognize that we're always dreaming, the dreams that we have by night, and there's dreams that we have by day. They're all a form of dreaming. So there is no out there. There is no them. There's just an us, there's just an I, there's just a we. That's all there is. No they, no there, no then. It's all here. That hologram perspective, it's hard for the ego, my ego, to wrap my arms around this when what I'm seeing is unkindness or judgment or some form of behavior that's anything other than the Barbie doll image of what I think I should be and what I think other people should be, or the Stepford version, whatever. But if I have a dream about a monster, I don't want to interpret that dream from the perspective of what part of this monster is me and what is my inner monster trying to tell me. It's easier when it's Mother Teresa in my dream or Oprah or an angel. I can be like, oh, every part of my dream is me. I am the angel. I am the Oprah. I am the Mother Teresa. But it's all in me. And I've found that is, so if somebody wants a little hack for dream interpretation, this is the best one, to just look at every aspect of the dream like it's a part of self and how our self is interacting. Sometimes there's dreams where there's a party, often parties. It's not like it's kind of a context, not necessarily a theme like chasing, but I always want to know what's the state of the party in the dream. Is the party a happy party or is it stressful? Because to me, the party in a dream is about all parts of self, part E. It's the place where the parts come and we get to see how harmonious are our parts getting along with one another. Are they taking sides? Is there a brawl? Or is it like kumbaya? The goal, I think, is a relative state of kumbaya, where all parts are treated like the United Nations, where we all have gifts, we all have challenges, but we all have things to share with each other, and where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's the goal. So as Joey, as you said, like tying it back to relationships, our whole friendship formula is really not necessary unless there's a challenge. Most of the time when we're in the honeymoon stage, when everything's flowing great, you don't need this. It's when you hit a bump in the road and there's this, oh my God, what happened? What do I do? Do we throw it apart? Do we ghost each other? So to me, when I hit a bump in the road with a friend or with my husband or with anybody that I'm in relationship with, if I can at some point quickly deduce what they're doing, like Joey said, down to an adjective. Somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'll just say that person was in a hurry. Have I ever been in a hurry? Yeah. So I think what we're really talking about here, about owning that all parts that are in the dream or in the waking dream are a part of self. And this, in spite of the fact that it's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes, it's where the alchemy happens. So I think when there's the pain of a dissonant moment, it's easy to sort of, to a greater or lesser degree, demonize the person that said the thing or did the thing that hurts. Like, oh, they must not love me. They must not care. They did this inconsiderate thing, therefore they're a liar. Everything that they said before about how much they cared about me, it's all amiss. They are basically a demon. They are bad, they are wrong, and they are off to the side where all the bad people go. And I, who is perfect as a lily, has never done anything wrong, I am in the good person camp with all the good people that have never done anything wrong. And I think that's kind of what the ego wants to do. Bad people over there, good people over here. And that feels good for a moment because it feels good to feel sort of validated. However, it's like then we can never go outside. We can never, there's the pain that sets up is so much worse than that immediate gratification, because it's the only way to live then is to create larger and larger castle walls that keep us separate. And I would dare say that the biggest pain in our lives as humans, in relationship and in life, it's the sense of separation, feeling that dissonance, feeling cut off, even if it's by our own hands. And the way the medicine starts to pour in, the healing comes from a state of unity. And so even if I don't like the behavior that person did, if I ask myself, have I ever done that myself, even to just a tiny little, just a speck, or might I ever do that if I walk 20 miles in their moccasins, or have I, or in some parallel plane, could I, even if I just say, yes, it could be a drop, then all of a sudden that little bit of humbleness, I feel like, is the very switch that opens the floodgates to grace and opens the floodgates to alchemy and opens the floodgates to healing. And it helps to preserve the relationship. So if I speak to you from a place of, wow, that hurt my feelings that you didn't invite me to that thing, or that you said that thing to me, but I know that your underlying intent was probably good, and that behavior that I don't like, I have it too. I've done it myself. All of a sudden we're now on the same wavelength. It's an even playing field, and now there's a place to go with it. There's less angst in it. So it feels like there is no healing. There is no repair without it. I was just working with somebody today who has a boss that they had such a great rapport with. And the boss has gotten really busy and has gotten very short-tempered and has kind of backed off of being so benevolent and kind. And this person I was talking to said, so basically my boss was a liar. My boss doesn't care about me. My boss is all out for himself, and has came to these unbelievably painful conclusions, and it's poisoning her. And that tiny little switch of, have you ever been busy? Have you ever not had the time to say all the nuanced expressions that you wished you could? And and the conversation is still in flow here, but it's hard to admit that. Talk to somebody else that I was doing a workshop this weekend, and he was doing an ogle, and he said, well, the person I'm really upset with lied to me. And I said, have you ever lied? He said, no. I said, well, could you ever? No, I'm not a liar. I said, what if your family's life was at stake and it meant the difference between saving them or not? Could you lie? He said, well, yes, I would lie if it meant to help people. I'm like, bingo. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking is for a drop. That's it. And that's when the alchemy can start to flow. It can't happen when we're putting people off into their own little corner. So I guess to wrap up this little piece is, I think, Joe, you and I think when we are really in our right minds, in our best Byron Katie place of like the best place. Somebody could accuse me or us of being some horrific way, like, you don't care, you don't love me, you're mean. And my response would be, that's true. I have that. Thank you. I'll look at that. Yeah, I probably have that. That doesn't mean that that's all that I am. No. Instead of being reactive about the implication that I could be selfish, or I could be hasty, or I could be unkind, to just say, yes, I have that. I have at least a speck of that. I'm not happy about that, but I got that. It's what makes me whole. Okay, back to you, Buff.
Ooh, that was so good. No, that was so good. It reminds me of art class. Reminds me of art class. You know, I remember Krista was in an art class, and she had to do like 160 squares of gray. So you start with white, and then you add one dot of black. Ooh. And then you do the next square with that. And then you add 2 dots of black, and you do the next square. And you just keep adding black, keep adding black until you go from white to black.
Oh, wow.
And that's the visual I thought when we were talking about, like, there's a speck of that in me. There could be 2 specks of that in me. There could be 10 specks of that in me.
Right.
I am all of it. I am every kind of T combination, you know, and maybe I'm not all the combinations.
And you have all of the pieces that you could combine.
Exactly. I have every piece that can be combined to make up any combination of human personalities. Mm-hmm. I am all of it. And I love how you defined the bottom line is we want to be connected. We want to be connected. And if we us and them ourselves, we disconnect ourselves. So it's self-serving in a loving way to recognize that we have those aspects. Now, the other thing you said, which I just want to redefine and change a little bit, is you said, if someone, let's say, hurts me, and then I say, you know, have I ever done that? Yes, I've done that. Now we're on an even playing field. I just want to say someone can hurt you to a level 20 ounces of that particular tea.
Yeah.
And you could have hurt someone 5 ounces of that particular tea. And it doesn't have to be the same ounces.
Exactly.
To relate to the reason behind
the adjective
behavior. Yeah, the adjective, you know, like for the most part, those parts of ourselves that we're not crazy about, those darker colors that we don't always like, they're usually and often fueled by fear or protection. Right. And if we can relate to that, like most people's aberrant behavior is fueled by fear. And the desire to be safe and the desire to protect, then we can understand the why behind the behavior. It doesn't mean that we agree with it or that it's okay or that we allow it or that we don't have boundaries with it. It doesn't mean any of it. It just means that we can relate enough that it's not an us or them, which keeps us in the one big diamond where all the facets exist, where we are all one. Because it's impossible, and I want to keep saying this, it's impossible to sustain only light, only love. We live on this dualistic planet, and in this dualistic planet, we have a lot of dense material. And the denser the material is, the harder it is to maintain access to our light. Now, I think I used a definitive word, like nobody can maintain that all the time. I don't know every person in the world. I don't know every enlightened master. I don't know that, because guess what? That is also a diamond. A diamond on this planet with every facet may have 99.99999% light and only 0.00001% darkness. Yeah. And they vibrate at that level because that's what their tea is made of. Their tea is made of only one drop of dark. That's it. And so that has to be able to exist too. And by the way, that percentage, that 99.9999 and that 0.00001 percentage is what an atom is made out of. It is what makes up cells and tissues and organs and systems and the human body. And it's what makes up matter. And so all that smushed together and slowed down makes up everything. And so guess what? We're all still made of that light, but
Right.
But it's that vibration is slowed down so much that we have a lot more darker colors, and dark is not equal with bad and wrong.
No.
Just like ions are negative and positive, and negative ions are not negative in the judgmental word. They're not negative. They're incredible. You get them from the earth. So I'm going off on a whole biological
I think I love it when you do that. It turns me on.
I love it too. We love our biology and our physics. So anyway, I just wanted to say, because you said it puts us in an even playing field. I just want to say it puts us in the field of humanity, and you don't have to have an even amount. Like, you know, you make someone ran someone over by a car and killed them.
No.
And, you know, I ran over someone with my tongue and hurt their profession.
Absolutely.
And they're both, like, to me, in the world of murder. Like, I murdered someone accidentally. I murdered their profession. I didn't murder a person, but I murdered a portion of their life. And so I'm relating to the grief and the remorse of harming someone so much. So we can relate in the area of guilt and shame and pain and remorse. And those adjectives we can relate on, even if it's a completely different circumstance. That helps us to relate to people. I also don't like when people say, I know exactly how you feel. No, you don't.
Ooh.
You are not in my body. But you can say, I relate to how you feel. I relate to how you feel. I feel like that is more, that feels like a more loving response to me. And
exactly.
Sometimes the response.
Exactly. I know exactly what you mean. Oh, wait, no, I don't.
And sometimes the response you give me that I also love is, I can't imagine what that's like. I can't imagine the extent of that. And that feels good too, because you're like, yeah, I know a piece of that, but I can't imagine that.
The whole of that.
The whole of that. So yeah, I pass back to you that those were some of the thoughts I had about some of the things you said.
So I think to swing, just swing from dark to light. I think the part of, I was kind of making it seem like my ego prefers the light aspects over the dark. But I would say that it's just as hard to swallow the light. There's a reason that it's called the light shadow, like the parts of humanity that are too good or too rich or too beautiful or too kind. There can be an othering of that aspect as well. And it's as if to say there's this relative comfort zone in me that is comfortable with owning a little bit of darkness, a little bit of light, and that's about it. It's pretty narrow. But the reality is the scope just is infinite. And sometimes I think in friendship, this feels a little vague to me, so maybe you can help ground it, Joe, because I'm kind of seeing this for the first time. But I think in some friendships, there can be either a latching on, like a neediness, or there can be a kind of, it can be like cat and mouse. And I think sometimes the neediness can come from projecting such goodness onto a friend that I, without this friend, am less, and I'm not enough, and I'm not okay. So I need you to be okay. And that's not true. One of Byron Katie's books, I think it was, I Need Your Love. Is that true? It's like the thought that you have such beautiful, you, Joey, you have such beautiful, pristine qualities of wisdom and love and compassion. I imagine most people, myself included, are like, I need that in my life. Give it to me. Get over here. Where are you right now? I need you. Whereas that is a recipe for pushing you away. And it's also simultaneously a recipe for pushing that part of myself that's away. What I'm looking for, I'm looking with. So if
say it again.
I don't know who said that. It might have been Ralph Waldo Emerson. What we're looking for, we're looking with. He said something like, we travel the world over looking for beauty, but if we don't carry it with us, we will find it not. A little more elaborate, poetic way of saying we search the world over to find beauty, but if we don't carry it with us, we will find it not. Ooh.
Hello, friend. So this is the space in our show where we would normally do a commercial, but since we're a new show, we don't have sponsorship yet. We're going to do it a little differently. But if you have a product or service that you think our friends would be interested in, then reach out to us ASAP at info@anatomyoffriendship.com. And in the meantime, Joey and I have a couple things up our sleeves. So, Joe, what's up yours? What's up yours? What's in your sleeves rattling around?
Well, as a holistic health counselor, I have a few slots available left on my book. And I'm really excited right now about the communication strategies I've been studying regarding neurodivergence and speaking to people who are struggling. And that's a massive thing going on in our world right now. Cal?
You are so good at that. Oh my goodness. So what I've got going on is you can go to my website, kellysullivanwalden.com. And if that's too hard to spell, go to ihadthestrangestdream.com. And there's a place where you can book a private session with me if you've got dream questions. Also, I've got my books and oracle cards on there. Speaking of oracle cards, the latest one that just came out is Wild Dreams Animal Oracle. This is from Blue Angel Publishing, and this has 44 animals. So it's kind of about like, what if you dream about animals, what are they trying to tell you? Mostly, spoiler alert, they're trying to tell you to just let loose and become more of your wild, fully expressed, passionate self.
Ralphie.
Let me plug another book called The Precious Present by Dr. Robert Johnson.
Ooh,
it's like traveling far away from yourself to come back to yourself. It's like the prodigal child journey. You know, you go away from God only to come back to love God more or love or trust more.
Is it The Precious Present or is it Your Inner Gold?
No, The Precious
Present. I need to get that one. I thought I read all his books.
Oh, and
Thank you.
It's a kid's book.
Precious Present.
A parable.
He's brilliant. I recommend all of his books. Well, at least the ones I've read, He, She, We, and Inner Gold. Okay. So whatever I'm wanting from you, I have to remind myself, oh yes, I wouldn't see it in her if I didn't have it in me. Spot it, you got it. But it might be an underdeveloped muscle. It might be a part that I just don't recognize, because kind of hearkening back to our previous episode in H for Hold Yourself, I was saying something about the more comfy way is to have people just do it all for us. We have to work so hard.
Everyone be generous and everyone be reassuring and everyone be kind and tell you how worthy and good you are.
Yes, come on, get with the program, people. But if everybody did all of that, that would be a great disservice. In fact, there was a Twilight Zone episode, oh my God, one of my favorite, where there's a guy who's a robber who dies in like a gunfight, and he goes, it was called, I think, Mr. Pip. He goes to the other world, and there's all these beautiful women, and he plays pool, and he always gets the ball right in the corner pocket wherever he plays darts. The ball, the arrow, the whatever,
the dart
always hits the bullseye. And at some point he tells his escort who brought him there, he said, I'm getting really bored of this. I think I'd rather go to the other place, hell. And the man says to him, what makes you think you aren't already there? Hell is getting everything you want exactly the way you want it all the time. That would be hell, because we would never have the opportunity to build any of those muscles ourselves. So if this works, I would say, in business as well. If we want to be more successful, we want to have more money, if we want to have more clients, then we have to recognize the inner equivalent within ourselves and then let it magnetically be drawn unto us.
And be it, not even just draw
Be
it.
it.
Be it.
Be it.
Give ourselves the thing we were wanting to receive. Give that.
Yeah. Like I remember before I met Dana years ago, I was really wanting to attract a soulmate. And I remember I wrote this song about, this is when Gypsy and I were recording stuff together. And it was called My Twin Flame. And it was all like a love song to this person that wasn't there. But I said something like, I'm not afraid of being alone because I'm building a home for my twin flame. Like I'm practicing already being there, that, and so there's something about that. Okay, I pass it back.
Oh my God. Okay. So good. All right. That just reminds me of the treat others as though they're precious. Treat ourselves as though we're precious. Treat ourselves as precious. I often think as a recovering codependent, how many people I make a meal for, or do their nails, or cut their hair, or, bring them a drink. But how many meals will I go without? And how I've still been cutting my own hair since I've been here in Oregon. It's ridiculous. My sister's coming. I'm going to tell her what to do. Anyway, so treat ourselves like precious. But since you brought up Twilight Zone, I would like to bring up my favorite Star Trek episode, which we've talked about before, but this is such a good place to have it here because we were also talking about Krista's art assignment with the white and the drops of dark that make this whole thing from white to black to gray. So anyway, I love this episode. It changed my life. Thank you, Star Trek. Okay. Ooh. Captain Kirk. I'm sure we've talked about it before. Captain Kirk accidentally gets into a machine that splits him into two, his light part and his dark part. And the light part was full of value and ethics, but it had no power. He had no power to assert his value or ethics. The dark part ran rampant and did damage everywhere it went. So the dark part, quote unquote, the quote unquote dark part, I hate the word dark. I want to use new words here. Right. But, quote unquote, the dark part of him was just like damage without focus. And the quote unquote light part was focus and value without power. And so it was like without an amalgam of all aspects of self, we are inert to express our ethics without power. And without ethics, our power simply does harm. So we need ethics to drive power. We need power to drive ethics. So this is my interpretation of that. And that made me feel more embracing of my quote unquote darker parts. Now let's switch over to the Enneagram. Yeah. The Enneagram, which we've mentioned, personality typing, program system. One of the things I love about, we've talked about loving about the Enneagram is that whatever number you are, 1 to 9, there's an unhealthy aspect, an out of balance aspect, and then there's a middle way. And like, if you're in your middle way, you take the difficult, challenging parts of that Enneagram number and you become a healthy version of that. Like I say, I'm a recovering codependent. I'm a 2 in the Enneagram, the giver. Okay. Which is like fueled by fear and used as a survival strategy. It is super codependent. It gives me, I give myself up. I exhaust myself for others. I just do too much. And then the giver I haven't given back to myself because I'm not balanced. I'm fueled by fear and I'm using it as a strategy. But if I'm balanced and I'm aware, I'm a giver to others where I'm moved. I'm a giver to myself so that I can remain a well of service. And that is what balance looks like. So the light and the dark Captain Kirk, separated completely out of balance. One is destructive. One is incapable of having any inertia. I mean, having, what's the word? Inertia is the opposite. That. Oh my God. Women in their menopausal stage. In mid-hot flash, impetus. Thank you. Okay. Don't have the impetus or the power to assert energy over our values and our ethics. So anyway, so here's where the importance of being an amalgam is, and being all of it. This is, I am all of it is the letter of the day. So if we can see the importance of not separating ourselves out from others or from ourselves, then we can be all of it, and we can find that middle place where we can, thank you, Star Trek, have the power to drive our values and our ethics in a balanced way, coming from as much light as we have access to as a human on this plane at this time.
Ooh, fabulous. And I'll call in a little Carl Jung and the notion of subpersonalities as I learned them, from the perspective that imagining a wheel, at the center of the wheel is the hub. And in the hub is my hubby, Dana. I call him Hub. Just kidding. And the hub
Not kidding. You do call him Hub.
I do call him Hub, but he's not everybody's hub. Although a handful of people call him Hub.
I call him Hub.
I know. My nephew, Frankie, calls him Hub.
Oh my God, I know,
it's hilarious. Okay, so imagining for ourselves individually, and then this maps onto humanity everywhere, I believe. So that there is within us, there's a wheel. At the center is the hub, and that is our spirit or our soul self, our higher self. And then there's these spokes that go out from the hub and touch the outer rims of this wheel, and those represent our sub personalities, of which we all have, I would dare say, about 20. There might be many more. There might be fewer. There's at least 3 dominant ones, but let's just say we have 20. And the goal of therapy, the goal of all of our spiritual work is to make the center the circumference, where the spirit self contains all, has a hold, just hearkening back to our previous episode, a hold of all of those sub-personalities. The little tough one, the little martyr, the little kind one, the little disconnected one, all of those little ones are all within. And I would say on a more global scale, that's also the goal, to look at each of us individually. I am a microcosm of the macrocosm of humanity. It all exists in here. And I've got this little soul self that is at the center, and every human, every variation of the T is all of those many, many, many spokes. And if my soul has been enriched and grown, my soul self wraps my arms around all of those aspects of humanity and within me. And I do think there is something about the way that we individually contribute to world peace, not just world peace, but world peace is to find that within ourselves. I mean, in an instant, I think if every one of the 8 billion, nearly 8 billion people on the planet right now, if we all had this moment of holding ourselves, it's all in me selves, all of those selves within this wheel of our own heart, I just wonder what this humanity would be like, and how we would interact with each other, and how the governments would be run, and how prison systems would happen, and I'm just curious. I just think that's kind of the big goal. That's kind of, at least that's the vision that I'm holding in here. And it starts individually. And yes, we should go externally sometimes and picket and protest and do all manner of service. But I think the biggest service we do to humanity and to our personal relationships ultimately is to do that work internally. That's my thought.
Okay. All right. I got one more thing to say about this.
Hit it.
Oh, so good.
Hit it.
I want to talk about the way we discriminate against extremes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of if you're just middle class and you drive a Toyota and you don't have too much money and you're not too poor and you just have enough, that you don't get picked on too much. But if you have a lot of money, if someone has a lot of money, we have people that don't have a lot that are judging the ones with a lot. Those people. I want to make sure that we recognize financially also in all these places where we separate ourselves from those people with all that money, those 1%, those rich people, those corporations, those big companies, those. I feel like that language, not only does it separate us, but it puts a cap on our ability to be abundant. And it's just as dangerous as saying some black guy in a hoodie is a hoodlum. It's just as dangerous. Like we all know in this day and age, that is atrocious to talk like that.
Yeah.
It's atrocious to discriminate against a person because of their skin color or their clothing or their size or their sex or their gender or their sexual, I'm not even going to say preference, because some people think being gay is a choice, and I'm not sure that that's true. So like any kind of discrimination like that feels atrocious. And so in the world of, we can often be loose with our tongues as we notice the inequity on this planet, all people starving over here and all the 1% over here with their yachts and throwing away money and whatever. Like, it's discriminatory, and that discrimination makes another us and them inside of ourselves. And you know what, oh my God, I'm working with Howard, our friend Howard, who is my rabbi, who has been in your life a very long time, who is
Howard.
Love Howard, Howard J. Rubin. He's my financial advisor. And
he wears a lot of hats, that man.
He does. Well, he's a magician. Also,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also we kind of share coaching with each other. And so recently we started doing a financial story, my brain, spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet to fill in the answers for these financial questions. And one of the questions was, how did you develop your story about money? And I had these two stories. So I grew up in an upper middle class family in the San Fernando Valley. We had a 2-story house with a swimming pool and a pool table and a ping pong table and a pinball machine and a pachinko machine in the first Atari set. So for all intents and purposes, we looked kind of wealthy. Add to the fact that my stepdad, somebody owed him some money, and he happened to be someone who hated driving. And so someone, to pay him back, gave them their limousine. So now we have a limousine. And he hires his nephew for like minimum wage to drive him around all day. And so I went to cosmetology school while I was in high school. I did it like twice a week during the week and all day on Saturday. And there was these girls that were kind of like mean girls, catty girls. And they were not very nice to me. And so we're standing outside of school after, the day ended. And this limousine comes driving up, and the girls next to me go, "That's my car. It's here to pick me up." And so it parks right in front of all of us standing there. My mom gets out of the limousine wearing a
chauffeur hat.
A chauffeur hat. And she walks around and opens the back door for me. And I go in the back door, and we drive off. Okay. So the girls are like, The next time I see them at school, they're super nice to me. And I conclude that money brings false friends. They didn't like me before that. And now all of a sudden they like me. So I conclude money brings false friends. I'm 16 years old. It takes, I think you have to be about 25 years old before your frontal lobe is fully formed. And your frontal lobe is the one that can think things through into the future. So I made these conclusions without realizing what a spell it cast upon my life. Okay, next occasion. My best friend, Stacy Jarvis, she lived across the street from me. And she saw our limousine, and she said to me, "Your family's rich, aren't you?" Now, that was a judgment. that. She didn't like me because we had money. She didn't like me because we had money. And her mom was a single mom working hard. She didn't have a mom at home cooking meals every night like my mom was. And she didn't have all the things that I had. So when she did that in a snarky way, I got defensive. I'm like, no, we're not rich. It's just that somebody owed my dad some money. And so they gave him this thing and he hired his nephew to drive him around. And it was just minimum wage. And no, we're not. Like, I did everything I could to defend that we weren't rich, because now I had determined that being rich, if that's what we were, upper middle class, that meant people wouldn't like me. So now I had the people that would like me because I'm rich and the people that I cared about that wouldn't like me because we were supposedly rich. And so I didn't want to be either. I didn't want to be rich for two reasons. And so my mom used to take me to this really cool boutique in the San Fernando Valley in Encino called A La Popcorn. Yeah. A La Popcorn is where all the cool kids went to get their clothes. And so my mom would take me to A La Popcorn to get my school clothes. And okay, so this story has to go and take another little turn. Mm-hmm. My mom, I thought she told me that she got $400 a week in allowance. My dad was the one that made the money. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And we would go to Gelson's to get our groceries. And my mom would get 2 carts full of groceries for 6 kids, 6 of us in the whole family, 4 kids and 2 adults. And she'd spend $300 a week on our groceries. And I had it in my mind that my mom had to spend her allowance on groceries. And therefore, I thought she was a slave, like she was enslaved by a hardworking man, and she was the slave wife who was unappreciated. And so I didn't even want to tell her if I needed a toothpaste tube. I would like get every drop of toothpaste out of there that I possibly could. I would be careful with my shampoo and conditioner because I was like, she had to use her allowance to replace these things. I didn't want to tell her if I needed mini pads. And if she did buy something for me or got me a new toothbrush, I was effusively grateful for what she did to provide the stuff for me. So I associated my mom as poor while my stepdad was rich. Ooh. So having said all that, I decided I want to go to Melrose and go to secondhand stores, and that's where I'm going to shop. And I was going to associate with the kids who had less, but were super cool. Like, I was going to be the cool kid who went to Melrose and wore the, ripped jeans and the used boots and the, everything was kind of cool because I was, artsy fartsy at the secondhand stores. So then that like narrowed my relationship with money. So this all came out. This is the first time you've heard some of these stories, but because Howard had this form for me to fill out, I just kept thinking about this story of money and how I put myself in this narrow place called be like everyone else. Just have enough so that I can be liked. And then that wasn't enough for some, and it was too much for others. I still was too rich for some. I was still too poor for others. Okay, so hold yourself. I am all of it. I am super wealthy. I am super poor. I am middle class. I'm upper middle class. I'm lower middle class. I'm all of it. But you know what? I don't want to be driven by old interpretations that I made, rejecting certain people financially because it meant they were controlling the world, or they were so poor they didn't deserve love. Like, what the F? These interpretations that most of us have about money, about people who have money, are made way prefrontal lobe formation. And we have to see that some of the things we say about people are developed at such young ages that there's a survival mechanism attached to them that creates survival strategies and personalities inside of us that are still running old programs that we have to change. Okay, who knew that this tangent was about to happen?
Right. No, that was great.
So if I am all of it, I also want to be the healthy version of someone who's abundant. If I'm the healthy version of someone that's abundant, I can be contributory. I can be of service. If I'm the unhealthy version of people that are abundant, I can be selfish and hurt people and use people. So you can't say all those corporations and all those people are bad and all the 10% or all the 1% are bad. That language hurts us because we limit ourselves.
That was beautiful and brilliant. And it causes me to have to go down my own memory lane about my associations and stories about the money aspect and my relationship with money. But I noticed when you said corporations, I was like, I immediately tensed and felt sick in my stomach. And there was this whole litany of things. So I got to notice that I have a judgment. I have okay, but I'm not that. Like there are some big corporations that are doing wonderful, wonderful sustainable work. I know that the United Nations was recognizing sustainable businesses that give a portion back, that don't use child labor, that are fair. They do all kinds of things. And I know there are many that do that. And then there's many that don't. And I want to say, what just happened to me, I feel like what I need to do, like if there were some steps here, the first thing is to recognize the trigger, recognize the, ew, I want to put them in another category. I want to separate myself from them. So I'm noticing the red flag. Second, I need to breathe and I need to boil it down to an adjective. What is it that I don't like? It's greed. It feels inhumane. It feels unfair, and it feels short-sighted, and it feels poisonous. It feels toxic. It feels like putting money above people. So I have to ask myself, have I ever done any of those things? And I can say, yes, I have, even if it's just been momentary, even if it's been to a very tiny degree. I can relate to all of those things, and none of those things am I proud of. None of those things do I celebrate, but the shadow, this is part of the shadow, part of my shadow. And once I do that, just even saying those things out loud, as much as it's a bitter pill to swallow to say that I have any of that in me, the greed, the putting things over people, like it's disgusting to me, but in saying I relate to it, it all of a sudden lowers the sick feeling in my belly, because the sick feeling is really, I believe it's from separating. So now that I feel like, okay, I have some of this in me. I have this. It doesn't have me. I have it. So then I can move to the elevate place from the ogle. If I'm ogling it, what can I do better? I want to do better. I want to do better regarding putting people above things. I want to be more kind and generous and just and fair, and look more deeply at where I do spend my dollars. And if there was, when it's time to vote, you bet I will vote based on my values. But that doesn't mean that I get to skip over the part where I look at how it's also a part of me that I'm working with. It's not completely external. Yes, we live in an external world where there is matter out here, but from that big, big, big perspective, it's all in here. And there's something that is, it's like, as much as it hurts the ego a little, it empowers the soul, because when I'm seeing the corporations outside of me, I am powerless about that. There's nothing I can do about that. But if I put them in me, I can do something about that. I can do, there's a lot I can do with that. So it's irresponsible, I think, to just put it all external without that internal piece, without seeing that it's all in me. With any friend, and I've had some beautiful friends that I loved that I felt so hurt by that I'm no longer friends with. And when I think about them, ouch, there's still that feeling that, oh, so I've got more work to do. I've got more alchemy to do. The moment I don't see them as separate from me, I see them as a part of me, I start to heal. And sometimes I think we have to do it over and over again, especially with those more persistent, stubborn shadow pieces. Those might be very well the parts that have the most to teach us. And I just want to also just acknowledge this last one thing that you brought up, Joe, about the being too bright, too rich, too beautiful, too much that's beyond the average. Like the goal of the survival is to just fit in. Don't stand out by being too much or too little. Like just you'll survive if you just kind of like be communist, like kind of just be like everyone else, wear the same outfit, go to the same job, be as miserable. But there's that thing that I heard about it from a shaman that I knew had lived in South Africa, and it's now become a more popular term, the tall poppy syndrome. How in South Africa, and I'm sure there's other places where there's fields and fields of lovely poppies where they probably make lovely heroin. Hadn't thought about that part before. But anyway, out of nowhere, there will be these poppies that just stand out among the heap. And the people that take care of that place, the farm or whatever, they'll come by and lop those tall poppies off so that everything looks nice and ordered. And I think there's some part of us intrinsically that fears being a tall poppy for fear that we will get lopped off. So it becomes easier to project all of that brightness, that goodness on the celebrities in the world. It's why we have such a celebrity-centric society that we live in. It's so much easier to look at them. They're kind of the gods and goddesses on the Mount Olympus, and we're just the little peons, and we can project all over them. But it's all a part of us. And what if what if the job is for all of us to be the tall version of the poppies that we are? What if all could be lifted? I mean, the goal is for us to own it all. I'm being very idealistic here, but to own, I think it may be even harder to own the light shadow, what's beautiful about us, what's brilliant about us. Marianne Williamson's famous poem. It's, what does she say? Oh, about our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Who am I to be talented, fabulous, gorgeous? Well, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. It's not just in you, it's in everyone. And as you let your light shine, you automatically liberate others to do the same. So that might be a good place to end. Is there anything else you want to say?
No,
yes,
I have to. I have
Go,
to.
please do it.
To add. Okay, because there's two things.
Yes.
Okay, bookmark. One is NBA. And the other one is National Basketball Association. And the other one is, I'm going to do the other one first because I don't want to forget that one.
Yep.
You had a friend that rejected you, was upset with you because she interpreted some of your behavior as selfish or self-serving or whatever it was. I can't remember what the actual word was, but it was something like that. And it was a shock that you were so generous with this person for so long, and you made one mistake and you were out, and your whole personality was demonized. So since we're on I for all of it, the first I was also innocence. Like she didn't see your innocence in this. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because I feel like it was, as you say, it's important to have all these different reflections from people around us or we won't grow. I think she was a shadow of you that rejected yourself. Anytime you did something imperfect, you would beat yourself up or be afraid that you would lose something because you weren't perfect. And so she, that's why I said, if someone is as mean to me as I am to myself, I will get defensive.
Right.
I feel defensive, like, wait a minute, you're being a little extra hard on me. So I just wanted to acknowledge how important those reflections are of people being hard on us, because it shows us how we are that. I am hard on myself. And so if it's not okay with me, if someone outside of me is hard on myself, then I best stop being hard on myself. That way, if you're hard on me, I can literally say, yes, I do that sometimes. And I'm not always my lightest, brightest self. And I'm really sorry about that. And I'm, make a living amends. And if that other person doesn't want to forgive us, guess what? That's on them. If I can forgive myself, they can become a them in that moment. They can reflect parts of me that used to be less forgiving, but now I am more forgiving. Thank you for that reflection. So that was,
honey, you brought up living amends. I have to insert this for a second because I said, I bookmarked it in a previous episode and we never got around to it. At some point, will you just say something, a piece about that and then come back to NBA?
Okay.
Tiny bit. I know.
Okay, we talked about my friend who I ran over her life with my tongue and my behavior and my codependence and my attempt to control her, and how many things in her life were negatively affected with consequences. And I had been living in a great deal of shame about it over the last year and a half, actually. And we recently had a conversation. But one of the ways that I made a living amends to her was to get more therapy, to face my codependence and my boundarylessness, not my boundarylessness, but my lack of proper boundaries more intensely. I spoke to my speak to my sponsor numerous times a month. I talk to you, I go to meetings, I talk to my rabbi, I talk to my friends. Like, I am facing this part of me so that I don't just make tiny little incremental changes in my codependence and my need to control things, but I'm going to the source of why am I so traumatized and so afraid that I use codependence as a tool. So my daily amends to her is to better myself, is to see the origin of my behavior and to not hurt anyone like that again. And it's a gift to me because that strategy has hurt me. It's been helpful. A lot of people like me because of that strategy. It's worked plenty. And even with Suzanne, who was here, like, I'm like, my strategy wasn't fully there. I didn't have a feast waiting for you. Do you still like me? Like, I'm so afraid. But my living amends is to live my truth more and to really spend my energy where I have the energy, and where I don't have the energy, don't spend it because it's dishonest. I'm using it to manipulate you to like me because I'm not liking myself. If I'm all of it, I must like myself. And that's what a living amends is really for.
Or maybe fall in love with yourself.
Fall in love.
If I was going to quote my friend Joey Sutton.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Let me do MBA and then we can
MBA.
Go. Okay. When you were talking about like a quick formula to, you said notice, breathe, adjective, NBA, notice, breathe, adjective. And National Basketball Association. And then I thought of a basketball. I thought of the whole basketball and your Jungian metaphor about having the hub be the whole of it. And I thought about my metaphor about we're all a diamond with all the facets within us. And so I thought NBA for people to quickly remember when they're feeling judgmental or they're separating themselves. Notice, breathe, adjective.
Oh,
it was a quickie, and there's more than that.
Great quickie. I love that. Oh, that's so good. And I love it because we're becoming athletes. We're building muscles. We're like, so we can jump higher and go further. And so we notice those things. And how else are we supposed to grow? Like, then by like noticing those things that are difficult and going, aha, like I want to become like an opportunist of like, instead of just seeing the bright and shiny and going, ooh, like the, whatever those birds are that look for the bright and shiny things, mockingbirds? No, whatever they are. No, there's some kind of bird. Anyway, I want to be somebody who looks for the difficult things and goes, oh, yay, here's another thing. Like with you and I, hey, you stepped on my toes. Want to run it through the friendship formula? Let's do it. Like getting excited about it. I mean, and also getting excited about the other things as well. It doesn't mean like we only get turned on by the difficulties, but let's get turned on by all of it.
It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity
to grow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Like notice the and then go, ooh, That's part of that's the nuances.
Notice, breathe.
Yeah.
See the adjectives. See how we like that.
Oh, that's so good. All right.
This is juicy.
This is
so
juicy.
Glad that I'm all of it because that means that you are me too.
Oh, and you are me.
I love you so much that I get to be you.
I love you too. And to our friends watching, listening, thank you so much for being our friends. And I hope this has been stimulating and percolating. And my God, we'd love to hear what this brings up for you on the side of yay, on the side of nay, whatever stories you have. Oh my God.
Side of gray.
On the side of gray, yay, gray, and nay. All of it. All of it. All of it. I'm every woman and every man. It's all in me. Anything you want done, baby. Okay. Curtsy out. Thanks for being our friend. Our next episode is
the last
one. Oh my God. P.
Don't tell anybody what it is.
I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's
Let them
P.
want to know.
All right. We'll see you at the next episode. Mwah. Sweet dreams. Until we meet again. Thanks for being our friend. Thank you for joining us on Anatomy of Friendship.
If this has been helpful to you, or if you have questions or comments,
please share them with us at anatomy-of-friendship.com.
If you haven't yet, take a moment to follow, like, and subscribe to our show.
And don't forget to share it with a friend or two or a few.
Special shout out to Dana Walden at Love Hub Productions for being our engineer, producer, and for writing our friendship song.
And Karina Grandma for being the voice of our song. Take it away, Karina.
Thank you